I've mentioned in one of my videos about not having space in the garden for a composter, and my cousin said to me, have you looked at hot composters? So I did a bit of research on YouTube, and actually a hot composter seems a really good idea. However, my wife is a little bit hesitant about me spending yet more money on the garden to buy insulation to build a hot composter. However, one of our neighbours, one of our friends down the road, has been building a porch extension, and they had piles of Celotex. So I was able to get some sort of largish but weird shaped pieces like this free of charge from their pile outside their house. And then I went and picked up some of the smaller bits just like this, just in case. We were wandering along the road this morning, carrying a couple of these, and another neighbour said, oh, do you want some more of that? I've got like 6 sheets in my shed. And yeah, was very kind and donated to us 6 sheets of Celotex. Do you want to show? There we go. And so I think now we've got enough to build our hot composter. I've been inspired by some other videos on YouTube, so I'll put a link wherever it ends up going. There, I don't know. There'll be a link to somebody else's video where they built it. They've just built theirs out of the foam itself, the insulation itself. I want to make something a little bit stronger. I'm slightly worried about the cats shredding, the cats that visit our garden shredding it. So we've got some planks of wood which were kicking around in our loft. These are pretty nice planks, but I think they'll make a nice, good frame for it. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Man versus Slug.
So one of the things we need to bear in mind is where we're going to put this hot composter. So follow me. This is an area of our garden where I think we've got a little bit of space, and it's going to be out of sight, which will keep some people happy. We just measured up some of the Celotex, and we think it's going to be about 65 centimeters by 90. So if we come out sort of 65 centimeters from the hedge and about 90 centimeters the other way, I think we've got space in here for the hot composter, and we'll have a little bit of space to get down the side. So we'll be able to come around the back and put stuff in the top. Then when we get stuff out the outside, we'll have room. Although we're going to have to do something about this sycamore tree, which is horrible and needs dealing with. Right, you're coming along this one. Now you start over this side. That's it. And you need to line up your eyes so your head's either side of the saw. Right, at an angle 45 degrees, like that. First thing we are doing is cutting one of the sections to make a door at the bottom of the composter so that we can get the compost out when it's done. Okay, gently so it doesn't tear.
But this is the door.
That's the door. Out there. Let's get closer to the wood. Next up, we are cutting a few dowels because we're using lots of little bits of insulating foam. We're going to be joining them together, so the dowels are going to go in and just give a little bit of extra strength to the build. We're going to be making the sides of it by joining 2 of these pieces together like this. It's going to make it a slightly odd rectangular shape, but we had 6 pieces, so it felt a good design. Because these have been sat around, they've got a slight curve to them, so I'm having to make sure the curves match up. And we're going to be using the dowels, as I say, to make the joint as strong as we can. The dowels are going to go into the side, and they're actually fairly easy to push in. Like that. And then we'll be able to push the other side on top of it. Let's turn it up like this. Experiments. If only there was a second pair of hands able to assist me. You hold that piece? There we go. Not as lined up quite as I'd liked, but we might adjust that and bodge it a little bit more. We're going to put some glue in there soon. That's one. We'll do a second. I'm going to be joining another piece on at 90 degrees so that we can make our composter. And what I've done is I've peeled back the foil, because when we glue it on here, essentially I want to be able to stick the foam to the foam, not the foam to the foil, although the foil sticks quite well to the foam. I don't know what glue they've used. So we're going to be putting that in there, and again, just to secure it, we're going to put a couple of dowels in, hold it nice and firm. Our compost box is starting to come together, so this is the bottom of it. I've just turned it upside down, and then the door's going to sit in there like that. Next up, what we need to do is build the base, so that again we can hold that in place, maybe with a couple of dowels to give it some strength. That's going to take us a little bit of measuring and cutting. I left the camera on while making the base, and unfortunately the battery died, so I made a little bit more progress, but today is a different day. My mother gets very upset that I change clothes between video clips. It turns out I don't record everything in a single day. So what have I done? Well, I've done the base, I've attached that and glued that on, and I have glued on these sides. I am using a polyurethane foam adhesive, and that's made a nice join. So today I need to join this front section and this back section, and because of the curve in the panels, I'll need to squeeze it all together. Some of the other videos on YouTube said that this is really good stuff for joining other bits of polyurethane together, because this foam can fill in all the gaps. So where I put those dowels, etc., it can squidge into the gap and make a nice tight bond. Right, I suggest you come to the side, like on the end here. Yeah. This stuff's dry, you see. Right, you can grab that bit of wood. We're using a couple of sash clamps borrowed from my father-in-law. If you're wondering where they've gone, Chris, they're here. Just to squeeze it together because of that curve in the boards while it dries. The box is coming together nicely now, and last thing I need to make is the lid. And all I had left was this sort of triangular piece, but beggars can't be choosers. So what I've done is I've chopped it in half, and I am going to turn that round and glue it on such that I can complete the triangle. Unfortunately, the end of it was chipped, so I am going to have to sort of glue it and then cut it lengthwise as well. The piece I need needs to be 90, which this is over a metre, by 65, and this is 64.5 down to here. I'll be able to get 65 here. Might look a little bit scrappy, but never mind. So now to chop this off before we glue it. I do have some store saws somewhere. I'm just too lazy to go and get them out. time to glue. It's all coming together nicely now. Next thing I have to do is fit the door. The door, I chopped off the sides, which are all the same height, but I've chosen to bring the base right to the front so that so the door's got something to sit on, really, in fact. Which means actually the door I've got is now too long and I need to cut it to size. Fortunately, it's all nicely marked up with these lines on this particular brand anyway, so I know where to cut. That side. A little bit too tight, a little bit fiddly to get that to fit, but fit it does. I'm going to have to design some kind of handle though so I can get it out, because at the moment I have to poke it from the inside. The other thing I need to do is cut that lid to size. Which I should be able to do just by leaving it carefully on top here. Now we've got a top that's the same size as the box. On one of the other videos, the one I referenced at the start of this, the person made their lid out of two separate pieces so that one would fit inside and the other would go on top. It's a really thick piece of polyurethane, so it's perfectly adequate, but it would be nice if it just sat down so it didn't shunt around. But I'm slightly hesitant to try and sort of cut wedges out all the way around. I might just chicken out of that and put a large brick on top of it or something like that. So even if I'm going to chicken out and put a large brick on top, I do need it to sit down to keep the heat in, and I want to tidy up these bits where I've glued it a little bit more. So I'm just going to go around with the saw and try and tidy up a little bit. See how well the lid sits now. That looks a whole lot better. Still a tiny bit of gap there just because the foam's not completely flat, but I think that will do nicely. So almost there. We could probably start filling it up with stuff. Other videos I've seen sort of put some bracing around it. I'm also slightly concerned about how well the polyurethane is going to hold up in the sunlight to the elements, etc. From what I've seen on the internet, where people are looking at compostability, decomposability, whatever it is, of plastics effectively. Polyurethane, they say, is quite weak and might only last 30 years, but I think they're looking at it fully degrading in the environment. I would like this to last 5-10 years, something like that. So I'm wondering if I should be covering it with something. But I haven't completely figured that one out. What I am thinking of doing is sort of wrapping some timber just around in strips, just to hold it together firmly, and then potentially as a way of sort of having a latch on that doorway. So I think that's the next task to tackle. Plan is not to compost my smallest child. I have sent her inside so that she can tidy up some of the foil that is loose around the inside of the compost bin in the corners. I have prepared the area for the composter to sit in, hidden away behind our trellis. While I measured up the space at the beginning of this project to ensure it would fit, what I didn't measure was the gap down to the composter. And I think we're going to have trouble actually getting it in here.
Down a bit. Down. That's it. Forward 20 feet. Right, there we go. Over this side. I got the
Are we getting on the side?
Yeah, on its side and right up high.
Hang on, I need to get underneath it before we start lifting. Right, you ready now?
It's already.
I haven't got it anymore.
Mum, move.
Flip the hot composter upside down now that it's in place. One of the videos I looked at had a lot of holes in the bottom to allow airflow in through the bottom. Unfortunately, the only drill bit I've got that's long enough to go through this thickness of foam is a masonry bit, but we'll give it a try. So hopefully that will do in terms of letting air flow through. Obviously moisture is going to be draining out of these holes. I have thought about trying to lift up hot compost and put some kind of drip tray underneath and collect all that sort of juice that's coming out and maybe use it for sort of pot plants or something. But I think we'll just let it drain into the floor. Probably too much faff dealing with the drip tray under a compost pile. What I've decided to do to protect these corners is to essentially build a sort of wooden frame around just the edges. This is going to be protected from ultraviolet by the reflective tin foil, and it will just protect these edges. Also, as I lifted it in, it's taken quite some bashing and we'll probably be squeezing past the compost bin. So I think by putting a bit of wood on the edge, it'll just make it last that little bit longer. And to avoid gratuitous shots of me cutting the wood, I've cut all the pieces to size, so now it's just to stick them on. Well, okay, you might want one gratuitous shot of me cutting the side, so here it is. I've overlapped the corners here, so at least the wood is joined to the wood, but then I've also been nailing it into the foam, and that's not going to really hold particularly well. But as I say, it's only there just to stop us sort of bashing the edges. So I think that will do. 3 more corners to go. Cladding is done, and we fitted a handle for the door, which is screwed all the way through to a piece of wood. I only now need to work out how I can sort of put a bar across like that too. I wasn't videoing. Cladding is now done, and I've done all round the sort of hatch so that as I wave a shovel around I don't damage the foam. And we fitted a handle to the door by screwing a piece of wood right the way through it. So that goes on there. And one last thing I really want to do is work out how I can sort of support a bar across the doorway to stop the compost pushing it out. Kind of imagining a sort of medieval castle door kind of thing. And the other thing we need to do is drill a hole in the top so that we can fit the thermometer through the top. There's my medieval style door bar. So I can lift that off and get the compost out. So one final finishing touch for the hot composter is the thermometer. Poke that in the hole in the top. Having only filled it up a couple of days ago, we don't have much temperature yet, but hopefully it'll pick up over time. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video about the construction of our hot composter. It's now gone really cold and wet, and the compost has really not had a chance to get going. So, yeah, it's only down at 10 degrees, which is about ambient temperature. But the stuff on the inside starting to rot, maybe? I don't know. Well, it's winter, so we'll be adding lots more to the composter, and hopefully we'll have some compost in the spring that we can use to put on the vegetable patch.